When it comes to investing, a lot of times we think getting in early is better, but that's not always the case. And we're going to talk about what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of buying a crypto presale and also buying an ICO. We're going to talk about what are the differences and what are some of the real benefits and also the downside risk of buying tokens when they're at these different stages. So let's jump in. First, I want to create like a framework around sort of what is a presale. So a presale is when a coin becomes available for sale, not necessarily on an exchange, usually off exchange, where you send your funds. A lot of times it's in Bitcoin, sometimes it's in other currencies. You send your funds to an address, and as a result, the company or the token issuer then releases some of their coins to your wallet on their system. So that's usually how it works. And sometimes they'll send the funds directly to your wallet, but it really depends on the situation. So now that we know what a presale is, we need to talk about what are the risks associated with a presale. Well, usually you don't know much about the company or about the business, or about the crypto. A lot of times these deals are done on the inside, and you don't really have a full gauge as to how much risk you're really getting in. You don't know if you're getting a good deal. I had somebody approach me the other day and said, "Hey, I'll give you 1,000,000 coins for $500. And I said, "Okay, well, what does that mean?" That means nothing to me because I have no comprehension as to what the risk level is. I don't know if I'm getting a deal. I don't know if I'm getting screwed. I don't know much about the project. I need a lot of details. As a real investor, these are questions you have to ask yourself. You don't want to just throw money into things. Sometimes you'll get lucky, but you have to use somewhat of a strategy in order to really be successful with it. So that's the framework around it. And now let's just talk about the downside risk or what some of the risks are. Well, the first thing being you have to send your funds off into a wallet that you know nothing about. You don't even know if the funds are going to get there. Let alone, a lot of the time, you don't even know if you're going to be compensated properly for the funds you sent. For example, I invested in a presale that had required a specific amount of BTC to be sent. And in order to compensate for the transaction fee, I had to send slightly more BTC in order to get my coins. It was a specific allotment of coins. So when I did this, I had to send a little bit more BTC than I wanted in order to make sure it was going to cover the fees. And ultimately, I didn't get any more coins for sending the more BTC. So that's an example of one of the downside risks, and I was just happy that I did get issued my tokens. So a lot of times, these are the risks that you take in trying to get in early on a presale. So now let's talk about the big advantages. That's what the headlines are about, and that's what most people want to hear about. So the big one being, yes, if you get in super early on a presale, you can make a shit ton of money. For sure, but the timing is everything. So even with a presale, there are different allotments. So what do I mean by this? Well, the way some presales work is they increase the token value depending on how many tokens have been sold. So if you get in early, I mean super early on the presale, almost like a presale to the presale, that's where you can really make your money fast. But there is a chance that you get in later on the presale, and now you're paying a much higher valuation for the same amount of tokens that somebody a week ago just bought. So keep that in mind. For example, somebody could be paying 1 penny and you could be paying 20 cents. And now you don't know if it's a raw deal or a great deal. And so then the other thing is you have to think about the amount of money that's been invested into the presale. Because if a lot of money's been invested, then you have to ask yourself, well, what are the chances that this high valuation is going to collapse on day one of getting onto the open market as an ICO? So let's just take a look now at what we're seeing on some of the charting software. I'm going to switch over here to Dext Tools. So this shows some of the coins that are just coming out in the early stages of an ICO. If we look at some of the hot pairs and we just go ahead and pull up a chart, this is a new coin. I'm on the daily chart. we can see that this one is not a pre-sale and it's not even an ICO. It's a little bit dated, but I wanted to use this as an example because it shows you what can happen. And this is a common theme right here where we see that the people that got in on the pre-sale, super early days, they could have easily 100x'd. And keep in mind, this is a hot pair, so this is not what happens with every coin. A lot of pre-sales get thrown down the tubes and are garbage. So with this particular coin though, we see an explosive growth to the upside, and then we see a massive collapse. This is very common. It happens a lot with new tokens. It doesn't happen with every token. Sometimes what you'll see is a massive starting price and then a complete collapse on the coin. A flash loan on the coin. And that's not what you want because you could have gotten in on a pre-sale and watched the coin just completely collapse and you lose your investment. So overall, this is actually what you want to see. Now, granted, this is a hot pair, so this is a coin or a new token that's doing well, but had you bought in on the pre-sale, you would have made a ton of money had you sold near the top. So keep that in mind. That's one of the real nice advantages of a pre-sale. Or just getting in as an ICO. Even if you got in the early days as an ICO, you would have made a ton of money on a very small investment. You could have easily gotten a 100x, if not far greater than that. One other thing I do want to talk about though is to manage your expectations. You cannot expect that if you buy a pre-sale that it's going to 100x and you're going to make a ton of money overnight. You may, but there's no guarantee that that happens. And another thing you have to manage your expectations with is your time horizon. A lot of times you could go in on a pre-sale and it could take the project, even post ICO, still a very long time to actually amount to anything and to actually see a rise in price. So you almost have to look at it like you're throwing in some money that you may never see again, that may be worth something someday at some unknown time in the future. That's how you have to look at this. And with that said, what I ultimately recommend when it comes to pre-sales is throwing in money that you can afford to lose. A very small percentage of your investment just to give yourself some exposure to the high risk assets if you are willing to stomach losing it. It's almost like buying stock options or just buying options in crypto in general. You're throwing some money at something that may have an expiration date in the future where you may lose all your money, or you may see a dramatic increase on the upside. So as always, guys, that's what I wanted to hit you with today. Pre-sales and ICOs are awesome. If you can get in, make the right picks, try to learn as much as you can about these different projects. If you like the content and want to see more videos on investment tips just like this, hit that thumbs up, click the subscribe below, and I look forward to catching you guys in my next video.